part two of my interview with Donald Trump Jr. I talked to him about those delegates who are trying to stage a revolt at the convention in Cleveland next month. As you know, a lot of talk, which your father talked about over the weekend, about this notion of the delegates being able to vote their conscience. Is that something that you would oppose?
Listen, I think it's crazy. You go through this process, you listen to the people, you go to all the votes. I mean, we've spoken about this, on your very show, Mark, where you can go to Pennsylvania, you can win every single GOP voter, but you get, 17 of the 72. I mean, it's a little ridiculous. I think politicians, if they know what's good for them, they have to vote what their people wanted. There's a reason we had the mass turnouts. There's a reason you have, this unprecedented wave. The reason it's a movement, not a campaign anymore. People are sick of that nonsense, and if they try to do something like that, I think it's just, the perfect example of more DC as usual, which is do as I say, not as I do.
So on the specific question of should they be allowed to vote their conscience rather than be bound by the vote, you'd say you'd oppose that change?
I think they have to go by what their people have said.
Right.
And their people have spoken very loud and very clear in all of these states. We've gone 37 states against a record-sized crowd of people who've done this for years and years. I mean, that should say so. It's not about their conscience, it's about the conscience of their people, and their people are for us.
So when Paul Ryan said over the weekend they should be able to vote their conscience, I'm not going to tell them whether to make that change or not.
Paul Ryan can say, say what he wants. Again, it's more, when I see the DC people doing this, it's more of exactly what upsets me and everyone else that I speak to about DC.
Right.
Whether that's other guys in similar positions to me or guys that are blue-collar guys working hard for a living. I mean, they're sick of seeing that sort of quasi, maybe we'll do this and maybe this is what we have to do. What I think people are sick of is politicians today that have a job to do running for election in 2020 or 2024. That's what they're sick of, and that's what's happening with a lot of these guys.
Right. So let's talk about a reality. Your father sewed up his nomination sooner than Hillary Clinton did.
Yes.
In that period, he has gone from even or a little bit ahead in some polls to pretty much behind in some polls. We had him down 12 to her. New poll out today, he's down 7. What's happened that caused him to move from an even position to at least a little bit behind, recognizing that there's still a lot of time left?
Well, listen, I think you see, you got Obama giving speeches about him, you got Hillary giving speeches about him, you got Biden giving his speeches about him. I mean, the left is, doing their unified attack front, but I think in the end that message is going to die away. When you get into all of the corruption, when you get into all of the nonsense, when you get into all of the waste, fraud, and abuse, and when people finally start actually covering it, I think that goes away. So I think there's going to be ebbs and flows in everything again. I think for us, being first-time politicians, that transition, would I love it to go a little bit smoother? Sure. But it's, we've learned along the way, and everyone's underestimated us at every step of the way. And we've always surprised them, and I think we're going to do that again.
So you concede you're behind now, but you say you're going to come back?
I don't think we're 12 points behind. I think we're net neutral in a lot of places. I think in a lot of the places that matter. There's going to be states that we're not going to win, and those are heavily populous states. I think in the swing states, the gap is much closer than that from what I've seen and what I've read these days. And I think we're going to change that. And I think we're going to have a unified message now. I think we're going to work well with the GOP, which we've been doing, and creating that relationship. And again, I think this is all part of that process of transitioning towards the general.
And again, you're not 12 behind in your view, but you do think you've fallen behind. I mean, the national
listen, I see polls, right? But I saw polls for months, Mark. I've seen polls since July of last year that said there's exactly a 0% chance that he could ever even win the nomination. Right. So, I don't give a lot of credence to the polls. I don't, especially this early. I think a lot's going to happen, and I think we're going to do a phenomenal job because our message is about the American people. Right. It's about jobs. It's about getting rid of the nonsense that prevails all over Washington. And there's a reason 14 million people voted for him in a historic primary. There's a reason that Bernie put an unprecedented, against the anointed one, put it forward in an unprecedented show. Ultimately, people are sick of the DC narrative. People are sick of watching politicians like Hillary Clinton, who from 2007 to 2014 made $140-something million while running the State Department. I mean, our government isn't their hedge fund. It's not their slush fund to pad their pockets with, for their charities where no one actually knows where the money goes. No one even knows what the mission statement is. It's a disgusting fraud. And if a Republican did what she did, they'd be in jail by now. But again.
Okay, I want you to just look towards the camera and address two types of people. First, what would your message be to Republicans who are trying to change the rules to make the convention more open and not just a coronation of your father's victory?
Well, I think Republicans who are trying to change the rules really need to listen to their people. I mean, we're in this place, and it's both Republican and Democrat. People aren't happy with government. People aren't happy with what's going on in D.C. I think maybe you should listen to the people for a change. Maybe that's the Maybe that's the thing that's missing in this country. Maybe that's the thing that's actually missing in politics, as opposed to your notion of, hey, I don't prescribe to all 10,999 points of conservative dogma. Instead, I'm 10,998, therefore you can't be a true conservative. I mean, I don't think that's the average American. I don't think that's the average voter. And I certainly don't think that's the average general election voter. So I think we should start listening to the people for a change and put someone in there who isn't known for doing the same old, someone who's actually done these things in the real world.
And what would your message be to the folks across the river in Brooklyn and Clinton headquarters who of late have been pretty confident about their chances in a general election?
Okay. I'm glad that they're confident. I always love to be underestimated. There's something nice about that, and we've been underestimated along every way, shape, and form. They have a team of 875 people to our 70, and guess what? We're doing pretty good. Their waste, fraud, and abuse is just a continuation of all of the Clintons' waste, fraud, and abuse over the decades, and that's never going to change. That's never going to go away. They won't become a streamlined machine. They won't run this country any differently. In Obama's own words, right? She'll tell you anything, and nothing will actually change. That's not going to change. Miraculously now it's a different Hillary than we've seen for the last 25 years. It's a different Clinton organization. It's not going to be corrupt. It's not going to be fraught with scandal. Give me a break. It's the same thing over and over again. People will hopefully finally realize it.
So your dad's going to win?
Yes, he is.
Okay. So let's end where we began with talking about the voters, people who are really for you.
Yes.
And have been concerned, or really for stopping Hillary Clinton. The Trump campaign is stronger now than it was before the change, because why?
Because we're getting to the general election. We're getting to where people and independents and other people who are, totally against Washington, that are totally against the establishment on both sides, can finally actually chime in and weigh in for a person who is exactly that, who is against the establishment, who hasn't done this for a living, who hasn't milked the government for decades to personally enrich himself. I mean, you have someone who's created jobs, who's brought jobs, who's fixed jobs, both in, whether it be building, whether it be resorts, whether it's all these things. I mean, he's the only guy that's actually signed the front of a paycheck here. I mean, everyone else, they talk about job creation like they know what it's done. They've never created one. It's all theory, not practice. I think it's time to put someone who's actually practiced it in real life and has done it over and over and over again for 40 years. Let him be in charge. Let him do it. Everyone can agree, you're not going to get anything different with the other guys. The other side has for years said, yeah, you're not going to get anything different with the other guys. It's just a new batch of the same old, same old. We're not the same old, same old.
Yeah. And he'll continue to make mistakes, but overall,
I don't think he'll continue to make mistakes. I mean, I think that he's going to be himself. Yeah. He's going to be Trump, and I think that generally has boded very well for him throughout his entire life.